Hey everyone! Welcome back to Story Hive. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Let's jump into today's story. My ex-wife cheated and left me for her rich boss, and now she's pregnant. But when I inherited millions, she wants me to pretend I'm the father and is begging for another chance. Here's the deal, my ex-wife, let's call her Olivia 32F. Within a month of that, she was pregnant. Olivia and I had been together for 3 years and married for a year and a half when she told me about the affair with her boss, whom we'll call Samuel 42M. We have a 1-year-old son together, and when she confessed, I was still trying to process it, but she already had the divorce papers ready because Samuel had told her he was ready to marry her. The only reason she had been holding out was that she wasn't sure if Samuel would commit. But as soon as she had some sort of commitment, she decided to dump me and take off with him. The divorce was straightforward. I wanted full custody of our son, and I got it. She didn't even bother to fight for it or anything else. I got everything we had, which made sense since she was now rich enough to have the lifestyle she wanted with Samuel. After the divorce, I didn't hear from her until recently, although a couple of mutual friends informed me she announced her pregnancy just weeks after our divorce was finalized. I don't know how far along she is, but it doesn't matter to me, since she's out of my life for good. The divorce was tough for me emotionally because I was actually in love with her, and I thought we had something real. In the 3 years together, I noticed her materialistic streak, but I never thought it would jeopardize our relationship. I've been doing well for myself as an oncologist, but I can't deny that Samuel is wealthier than I am since he owns the company Olivia used to work for. Even though they grew close, I never felt threatened because I believed Olivia loved me as much as I loved her. Clearly, I was mistaken. After Olivia left, she tried to claim it was because I never had time for her, unlike Samuel, who was always there. It's not that easy to fool me. I know the real reason was Samuel's wealth. When I brought it up, she cursed at me, acting like I was terrible for even implying it. Recently, she reached out to me about money. I've been named the sole heir to my uncle's fortune. For context, my uncle was a businessman who built a real estate empire and never married or had kids, but we were close. I hadn't expected him to name me sole heir to everything he owned. Everything is still being evaluated, but I know I'm looking at an estate worth over $2 million. I haven't even considered how much his assets are worth. He left the company to me, but I'm not interested in running it. Luckily, he left instructions for me to appoint his CFO as the CEO so the company runs smoothly while I benefit from it. Although I love my work with this wealth, I can give back to society in significant ways. Now let's delve into Olivia's not-so-noble plans. Last week, I told a couple of friends about my inheritance over dinner. They seemed happy for me, but one must have snitched because Olivia found out. The next day, she showed up at my house, heavily pregnant, wanting to talk. I was about to tell her to go away, but I had a gut feeling I should hear her out. She tried to make small talk, but I wasn't interested, so I stuck to one-word replies. When she congratulated me on my inheritance, I was surprised she found out, but I thanked her. Then she asked about our son, which upset me since she had ignored him for 6 months. I snapped and was grateful. My son wasn't home to hear it. I told her to get to the point because I knew she had a purpose for being there. Eventually, she got to the point. She wanted to discuss the new addition to our family. I was confused since I assumed she was pregnant with Samuel's baby. She hadn't conducted a paternity test yet, but insisted that since she was still married to me when the baby was conceived, I had an equal right to the child. Then she dropped the bombshell. She wanted my name on the baby's birth certificate as the father. I laughed at her plan, realizing she was trying to secure the baby's future and perhaps her own by making sure I took responsibility. I told her she was foolish for thinking I would entertain such an idea and asked her to leave. She didn't, continuing to reason with me that it would help our children bond if they shared a last name. It was pathetic since she hadn't even checked on our son in months. I made it clear that if a paternity test proved I was the father, I might consider her idea, but otherwise I wasn't interested. She argued more, trying to convince me she cared about the relationship between her future baby and our son. I told her our son barely had a mother now, and adding my name to the birth certificate didn't make sense if I wasn't the biological father. She didn't like the implication that she was a gold digger, so she screamed at me again. I threatened to call the cops if she didn't leave, and finally she did. Afterward, I was upset that she thought I would just let her name me as the father without proof. If I was actually the father, I wouldn't mind, but her suggestion didn't sit well with me. I decided to reach out to Samuel and emailed him about what happened. I wasn't sure if he knew, but I wanted to create trouble. I got lucky. He had no idea what Olivia was up to. After sending the email, he got into a big fight with her. Instead of owning up, she's been blaming me and posting about it constantly, trying to get our friends to talk to me. Our friends are on my side, believing my actions were justified. I suspect one of them ratted me out to Olivia, but I don't know who. She's been relentless, posting daily about how I'm jealous of her life and trying to ruin her relationship with Samuel. It's annoying since I've done everything to avoid her. She thinks she can lie about what happened, seeking sympathy to fix things with Samuel, but it's coming at my expense. I considered posting the truth about how she wanted my name on her baby's birth certificate. I finally did it, sharing my side of the story on social media before even looking at the comments. Most of our friends support me, which means a lot. Olivia hasn't received the sympathy she wanted, and I heard she's moved back in with her parents since Samuel doesn't want her living with him anymore. It's been over a week since I emailed Samuel, and although he hasn't replied, I know things are falling apart for them. I'm glad karma is catching up to Olivia for leaving me and our son. I hope this teaches them a lesson, but regardless, I'm still going to be rich. Update 1. As the days passed, I felt a mix of relief and anger after my encounter with Olivia. It was surreal to see how quickly things had turned since our divorce. Olivia, once my partner, had transformed into someone desperate, grasping at any chance to secure her future and now, potentially, the future of her unborn child. I couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. How could she so easily abandon our son and then, when I found financial success, try to claim me as the father of her new baby? It was as if she saw me as nothing more than a safety net. I was still processing my own feelings about the situation when I started noticing the ripple effects of my email to Samuel. Olivia's posts became increasingly frantic. She portrayed herself as the victim, claiming I was jealous of her life with Samuel. Each update felt like a calculated move to gain sympathy from our friends and followers. It was frustrating to watch, especially knowing that many were privy to the truth and supported me. Meanwhile, Samuel remained silent. I wondered if he was reevaluating everything: his relationship with Olivia, the decisions that led him to this moment. My gut told me that the revelation had shaken him deeply. If I were in his shoes, I would want answers too. One evening, as I sat in my living room contemplating my next move, I received a message from a mutual friend. They had heard through the grapevine that Samuel confronted Olivia about the situation. Apparently he was furious. The thought of their confrontation brought a slight smile to my face. Olivia had always believed she could manipulate those around her without consequence. Days turned into a week, and I felt the tension building. Olivia's online rants became more aggressive, and I started to feel the weight of her accusations. I realized that I had a choice. I could stay quiet and let her narrative take hold, or I could set the record straight once and for all. Ultimately, I decided it was time to speak my truth publicly, not out of revenge, but to protect my reputation. I drafted a post detailing my side of the story, my love for our son, Olivia's abandonment, and her desperate attempts to rewrite history. I hesitated for a moment, thinking about the potential fallout, but I knew I had to do it. When I finally hit post, a wave of relief washed over me. I felt lighter, as if I had released the burden of her lies. I knew there would be reactions, some supportive, some critical, but I was ready to face them. After all, this was my life, my truth, and I had every right to share it. As the comments began to roll in, I braced myself for the storm. Little did I know it was just the beginning of a much bigger upheaval. Update 2. The responses came flooding in almost immediately. Friends and acquaintances alike chimed in, many expressing their support and disbelief at Olivia's actions. Some even shared their own stories of betrayal, creating a wave of solidarity. It felt good to see that others recognized the truth of my situation. But then there were the detractors, those who believed Olivia's narrative. They accused me of trying to tarnish her reputation out of jealousy. Their comments stung, but I reminded myself that people often react without knowing the full story. I refused to let their words shape me. Days later, I got a text from Samuel. My heart raced as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. He wanted to meet. Curiosity piqued, I agreed, eager to hear his perspective and maybe even offer some clarity about Olivia's manipulation. When we met, the tension was palpable. Samuel looked worn, ice-shadowed with fatigue. I could sense the weight of his decisions bearing down on him. As we settled into a quiet corner of a cafe, I had no idea what she was doing, he admitted, frustration lacing his voice. I thought we were building something real. I nodded, understanding the pain of betrayal. She's always had a knack for spinning stories. It's what she does. I shared the details of our conversation, emphasizing my shock at her request. Samuel listened intently, his expression shifting from anger to realization. "Do you think she's trying to use the baby to get to you?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "It seems that way," I replied, feeling a mixture of sympathy and disdain for her. "But honestly, I'm more concerned about our son." As we continued to talk, I sensed a newfound camaraderie between us, a shared understanding of the person Olivia had become. By the end of our meeting, we had forged a fragile alliance, both determined to protect our children from the fallout of her decisions. After our conversation, I felt empowered. Samuel and I began to strategize, focusing on how to approach Olivia and put an end to her manipulations. I knew she wouldn't take kindly to being confronted, but I also realized that we couldn't allow her to control the narrative any longer. Meanwhile, Olivia ramped up her online campaign. She began posting more frequently, painting herself. The sheer audacity of her statements made my blood boil. It was time for action. In the days that followed, Samuel and I devised a plan to approach her together. We wanted to confront her not just for ourselves, but for the sake of our children. It was clear that Olivia needed to understand the consequences of her actions. When the day finally arrived, I felt a mix of dread and determination. As we arrived at her house, I could see her silhouette through the window. Little did she know that her web of lies was about to unravel. Update 3. As Samuel and I stood at the door, I felt a rush of adrenaline. We exchanged a glance, silently affirming our resolve. When Olivia opened the door, her expression shifted from surprise to wariness. She quickly masked it with her usual bravado, but we both sensed her unease. "Why are you both here?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. "Olivia, we need to talk," Samuel said firmly, "about everything, the baby, the inheritance, and how you've treated both of us." Her eyes widened, and I could see her calculating her next move. "I don't know what you're talking about," she began, but Samuel interrupted. "Cut the act. We know you've been manipulating the situation to suit your needs." His voice was steady, but I could hear the anger simmering beneath. She took a step back, her bravado faltering. I'm just trying to do what's best for my children." "Is that really what you believe?" I interjected, stepping forward. "You abandoned your son, and now you want to use this baby as a pawn." Tension filled the air as she opened her mouth to argue, but Samuel continued, "We want what's best for both kids, but this has to stop." As we pressed her, I saw cracks in her fade. The truth was finally being laid bare. She stammered, trying to redirect the conversation, but Samuel and I stood our ground. It was clear she hadn't anticipated us working together against her. "Look," I said, my voice softer now. "We're not here to attack you, we're here to protect our kids. You can't keep trying to play us off each other." For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of realization in her eyes. But then the defiance returned. "You are both just jealous and trying to ruin my life." After what felt like an eternity, we finally reached a point of understanding. Olivia reluctantly agreed to a paternity test for the baby and promised to seek counseling. It was clear she needed help, and I hoped this would lead her on a better path. As we left her house, a sense of relief washed over me. Samuel and I had taken the first step in reclaiming our lives from Olivia's chaos. We parted ways with a newfound respect for one another, both committed to doing right by our children. In the weeks that followed, the paternity test confirmed that Samuel was indeed the father of Olivia's baby. With that clarity, she shifted her focus, beginning to take responsibility for her actions. I maintained my distance, focusing on my son and my work as an oncologist, grateful for the peace I was finally starting to find. Though Olivia's journey toward redemption would take time, I felt hopeful. I had learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of standing up for myself. As for the inheritance, it was a blessing, but I knew the real treasure lay in being a devoted father to my son. In the end, I realized that life has a way of bringing clarity amidst chaos, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Thanks for tuning in to today's Reddit story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on more amazing stories. See you next time.